every terrible thing you ever did and let me love you anyway. Edward Allan Poe.
Thank you for joining us for our fourth episode, where we lift the veil around the journey through addiction to recovery.
For our first 6 episodes, Elizabeth and I plan to discuss these topics generally. We're going to base most of the examples on our personal experience. But as we move forward within the podcast, we will begin to look at these topics from different angles and perspectives. But before we dive into our main topic, please allow us a moment to introduce ourselves.
My name is Elizabeth Maria of Elizabeth Maria Unlimited.
And I'm Jackie Lyons of Akashic Energy Healing.
And together, we're the hosts of Sex, Drugs, and Spirituality, where we navigate the power of personal growth and self-discovery through exploration and acceptance of our shadow selves. In a world shadowed by addiction, the path to recovery can appear insurmountable. But for those who dare to face their demons, a journey of healing and triumph lies ahead. So in this episode, we are exploring this harrowing path that both of us have been on, from darkness to light. And we are shedding light on the journey of our own personal addiction and how we overcame that to recover. In our episode today, we're going to look at some of the struggles, the challenges, and ultimately the triumphs of battling substance use. And we hope to also share our hope and healing for your own recovery. So our aim for this podcast is to increase awareness and shift the conversation around substance use. Addictions can consume our lives. They can lead to a loss of control, of disconnection from our true selves. But there is hope. There is so much hope, guys, so much. So within the recovery spiritual journey, you will find so many transformative opportunities of self-discovery. I hope that in sharing our own journeys, that you will be able to truly know that you are not alone.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That was so beautiful. Addiction can be a complex web that entangles many individuals. It impacts our physical, mental, and emotional well-being. Addictive tendencies often leading to isolation as well as to despair. But before we begin the journey to recovery, it's a crucial part to pause and reflect on the depths in which addiction has affected our lives. The period presents a unique set of challenges. It is a time of immersive vulnerability and change. The uncertainty that we feel, we must rebuild these foundations of our lives and begin to embrace new possibilities of a future that is free from addiction. Connecting to our inner selves can be profound and an ongoing process during recovery. One of the key tools to aiding in this journey is self-reflection. By beginning to regularly self-reflect and use practices such as journaling, meditation, intention, and so many more others that we will discuss, we will learn to develop a deep understanding of what our triggers are, how to manage our vulnerabilities, and embrace our desire for ourselves. As we progress on the path to recovery, we are nurturing a deep connection to our inner selves. This becomes paramount in our journey to understanding our conscious sense of self, and it involves embracing self-care practices that nourish our physical, our emotional, as well as our spiritual well-being. So thank you, friends, and please give us a moment to discuss our personal journeys and views on the topics with you today.
Oh, Jackie, thank you so much. I am just filled with all of those, warm energies is flowing through my body. Thank you. That was beautiful. Okay. So, Jackie, the way that I'm going to discuss my journey is I have 12 main kind of points that I wanted to touch on. And honestly, everything and this is one of the reasons why I love our format for this podcast. Like, whatever doesn't get touched on, I know that we will flesh out and discuss it later on. And this part of the podcast is really about, my own personal spiritual transformation. I do want to give some disclaimers. And Jackie, please, if you have any questions or if you want to interject at any time, please just do so. Okay. Okay. So I want to say that I have been in that state of reflection that Jackie was just discussing for probably, I'd say, the last 3 years or so, really looking at my own journey from an eagle eye view and beginning to see by looking back really what has worked and what hasn't worked. Or, and I don't want to, because that in itself kind of lends itself to dualistic thinking, but what works for me, and maybe, if it didn't work for me, it doesn't mean that it wouldn't work for someone else. That's a disclaimer for me. The way that I think about my recovery journey, I was very steeped in the tradition of the 12-step programs from a very early age. I went to my first NA meeting when I was probably 12, 13. And this was even before I even really had a daily addiction that was out of sync with, my natural rhythm or whatever. But because of these experiences, I feel that I'm coming about it in a way that is revisioning and updating what I view is some outdated recovery modes of thinking. And so I will go through. For me, step one, this was my awareness step. This was where I realized that I needed some type of solution for the situation that I found myself in had become unbalanced. The first time that this happened and I was able to gain that eagle eye awareness, I was 23, and I remember it very, very clearly. I was living with my mother, and I'd just gotten back from a, traveling and gallivanting expedition. And I had been really going hard in my cocaine addiction. At that point, I was using intravenously, and it had gotten to the point where people in my life were dying from this dis-ease of the body. And one night I crept into my mother's room and I knelt by the side of her bed and I cried. I cried and I told her everything. I completely just told her everything. And I mean, she pretty much knew everything anyways, but I told her everything and I asked for help. And so what she did was she gave me enough taxi money. We had taxis back then. This was in the late 90s. She gave me enough taxi money to go to speak to a social worker friend of hers. It was at that meeting with the social worker. I did the same thing when I got there. I broke down, I cried, I told her everything. And she was actually the first person to ever say this to me. She said, "Okay, so you've been self-medicating. Do you want to try something different?" And I just, at that moment, I just got chills of, it was like the first time that I hadn't been shamed, blamed, person blamed, that I had been held in a knowing that what I had been experiencing was a maladaptive form of self-medicating from intense traumas. And so that was really what I consider my step one. And so this stage can come over you, this awareness, at least for me, it came pretty swiftly, though after that, I went back and forth for many years after that as well. I believe now that this type of awareness can take some people lifetimes to get to, or it can happen in a moment. And so then moving into a reframing of the 12 steps. And the reason why I've decided to do this was because I did, and I guess, you could say successfully worked the program for 6 years when I was in my mid 30s. And I made a conscious decision to walk away from AA, not because I am an AA basher or I hate the program or anything like that. AA was there for me when I needed it. It saved my life. I believe that the program does work if you work it. There's some, I have some incredible friends that I've made through the program. I believe that the structure itself, the 12 steps, is a wonderful way to frame an organizational standpoint. But for me, there were certain aspects of this traditional model that I felt were outdated and needed to be looked at and questioned. And so the first is, and this is really going into the idea of, I believe that I am powerful, not powerless over any exterior person, place, or thing. In my notes, I say, we are power, not powerless. We cannot be powerless because we are God source energy. And so I split it up like this. Mind and spirit is the energetic frequency that we emit. Mind being ego and subconscious, and spirit, that is our connection to the one energy, God, source, whatever you want to call him, it, she, he, we. And then I couple this energetic frequency with the physical body in the environment. So that is the social work person and environment perspective. And so I believe, taking this equation, if you will, that we choose to energetically give our power over to material people, places, and things. And so a more solution-based model is that we became aware of the problem and we commit to taking our power back. Another issue that I had with the traditional models was this idea of you either are or you're not, either or fallacy. And I made the decision to leave these more traditional models. I was actually giving a lecture to my English 1101 students on fallacies, and I began to discuss the either or fallacy, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Oh my God. The model that I was following at the time basically said that if I used or any kind of exterior, substance, that one, it would separate me completely from God, and two, it would mean that I was in the throes of a powerless, unconscious, active addiction. And it was in that moment that I realized that there are a infinite number of possibilities, which is basically proven within quantum physics, the idea of the quantum field, that there are infinite possibilities out there, not just two. And so I had issue with that. Again, I also had issue with the program that I was working being more problem based instead of solution focused. I had a very hard time ever saying my name is Elizabeth and I'm whatever, because I didn't view myself as that. And so, really another way that I have come into my own power is to say, I am a human reclaiming my mind, body, spirit balance, instead of, I am a human, I am a being, right? That really goes into, again, acknowledging the inner, the energetic frequency that we're all emitting. We're beings, we're vibrational beings. So within this acceptance, and this really goes into the second point, there's not a power greater, but rather a power within us. And so I feel that when I relinquished, and again, I believe that this was a choice, not based on a chemical imbalance in the brain, that I gave my power over, that we can also make a conscious decision to take our power back, which is what I began to do in my own process of healing. I believe that we connect to our power within the present moment. And it is that in those present moments where we can begin to release the energy of guilt, shame, self-judgment, judgment of others, any of those energies that are keeping us in what I now refer to as hell loops, or patterns that are outdated and no longer serve our evolution. I believe that at one point, that the exterior substances were working. They were doing what they were intended to do, which was to, quench that pain and fill that void within me. And but at some point it becomes an outdated model, an outdated way of being okay. And so that's when I decided to shift and get into action, which I believe is really embodies the third step and takes you all the way up through the 12th step, because I believe that faith without works is dead. And so really the first two is like, it's awareness of there's an issue, and then acceptance of that, and then the action, right? with just shifting from, instead of I'm separate from, I am a part of, and shifting from a problem based to a more solution based. So these, again, are the mind shifts that help me to relinquish the energetic attachment to any type of exterior person, place, thing. In order to do this, this is moves into step 4, I had to go internal to see the origins of the perceived suffering. This stage, the beginning of it, I believe that I started when I was doing the more traditional model of recovery. And I'm actually going to get into the word recover in just a minute. But when I did my fourth step, when I was in AA, I experienced some of the most profound breakthroughs in my life. And so I believe that it is very important to do an internal, kind of, I guess, summary and see again, like what's working, what's not, and this is about going into the shadow self. And this is, where you're being 100% fearless, but gentle with yourself as, one goes in to do things like inner child work. I mean, it's some tough shit. No, not gonna lie there, guys. Some tough shit to look and decide what is limited and outdated. But then the beauty is that in finding what is limited or outdated is that we get to upgrade our experience. And so in order for me to be able to do this, I had to go in and take a look at all of those, and I don't want to use the word low, but denser energies. We're talking the energies of anger, resentment, victim consciousness, lack consciousness, envy, jealousy, pride, greed, selfishness, judgment, self-judgment, shame, worry, secretiveness, and I think those are all the big ones. But the first time, and I believe that this is an inventory that really, we should do continuously. But the first time that I did this and was able to really unabashedly take a look at my shit, the two biggest things that I came up with, and I mean, dude, it's like, maybe it sounds totally simple because everything really is simple. But it was, okay, one, I choose emotionally unavailable people because I'm emotionally unavailable. And that, I mean, guys, I freaking cried over that shit for like weeks, because I had always considered myself such a loving and emotionally open person. And this was, in my early to mid 30s, and I always thought that I was so open, but really, I was choosing emotionally, people that couldn't open up emotionally because it was me. I was mirroring myself with the other people that I chose to surround myself with. And the other one that was another hard pill to swallow that I am still really walking through today is that I had used my sexual powers lightly. And in that, I was not looking at connection from the divine union of two people, but, as another way, in some sense, to meditate, not meditate, but to medicate myself, right? It was just I looked at it as just another way to numb or run or whatever. And so, but that was the first time. I have uncovered so much more shit about myself since then, but we don't have to go through it all now. Yeah. And so really going internal and beginning to see those hell loops or those patterns that don't serve. 5, accepted. And so I am looking at this at number 5 is really beginning to accept who we are through an exception, accepting our past choices as neither right or wrong, but rather when we can rise up above all material experience, we can see these moments as what they were and what they are, dualistic existence. So there is in my spiritual practice and what has helped me to relinquish the dense energies around substance use is that there is the choices that I made in the past were the best choices that I could make based on my frequency and who I was in that environment, and enabling myself to shift my focus to begin to view everything in a more expansive way and less in, again, that black and white dualistic right wrong up down kind of thinking really helped me to dissipate the energy around, and not to take away the blame because or to shift the blame or anything like that, because I take full responsibility today for my choices that I chose yesterday, even if some of those choices were really hard to freaking look at. I've had to look at selfishness that I've, all kinds of funky shit that I've had to release during this process. And so it's all about, I cultivated this eagle-eye view of my experiences. And within doing that, I was able to allow these outdated frequencies, these outdated, like the energy around keeping secrets, for instance, was a huge one for me, and also the energy around worry, and secretiveness, worry, and guilt and shame were probably like the big ones for me that kept me in the hell loop of active substance use. As an example, I was someone that would go on binges. And so, I may not use a substance for a couple of weeks, but then when I did decide to use it, I was going to go balls to the wall. You know what I mean? Hole up in a hotel, what have you, 2 weeks later, and I totally got into that. Oh my God, just like totally like, going. And so then at the end of the run, what goes up must come down, right? And so I would be on my way driving home, but then I would get hit with this guilt and shame. It would come over me so strong. I remember once I was literally like 2 blocks away from my family's house, but that guilt and shame literally created a wall that I was unable to drive through. And so I literally turned around and went back because I could not face that guilt and shame. And so really, 5 for me, was huge in accepting who I was in that moment without admonishment, without the feelings of guilt and shame, to just again rise up and to begin to look at my choices from a gentle, empathetic perspective, like, okay, Elizabeth, this was your choice. How you feeling about this? You know, whatever. And so that really brought me into step 6 or stage 6, or however we want to say it. And this was the idea of becoming ready to receive God energy or source energy or healing. And this is a process that, you know, I'm really still in, and I'm learning how to open my heart to receive unconditional love, because, you know, it for a long time, it was very easy for me to give love, or possibly my form of love, what I was able to give. But I have had a incredibly hard time receiving that same love. And so how I was able to do that was, I look at myself again as a part of God, not separate from. And so we, me and God, or I am, which is God, choose to remove our limiting beliefs. And so limiting beliefs for me are these beliefs that are energetically holding me in a state that I am moving away from, that is no longer serving me, but the energy is keeping me in that state. If that kind of makes sense. And so through removing these energetic blocks, if you will, that is when breakthroughs have come. And again, this is, you know, guys, a freaking lifelong process. So be gentle with yourselves. Yeah. And then, you know, again, going back to the I am presence, choosing to again release these outdated, dense energy patterns, or like I said, I call them hell loops. You know, just these dense energy frequencies that keep you, you know, at hotels or hanging out in sorted places or whatever. I was able to do that, and it really, I think I was introduced to sound healing. I was actually introduced to sound healing in like 2012, 2013, but I was not ready to be open and to receive that type of healing. And so I totally poo-pooed it. I was like, what? That's a bunch of freaking malarkey. I'm not even down. One of my friends, she was getting into it. And honestly, at the time, I was like, homegirl is, you know, she's losing her mind. That's what I thought. And then, of course, fast forward 3 years, and I had actually totally forgotten about that she was doing like frequency tuning, vibration stuff, and until I again was reintroduced to it when I was actually living in a woman's shelter. And that was where I began to do what I refer to now as releasing ceremonies. So that is Peter Levine's idea of shaking out that trauma, dancing it out, movement therapy, anything to release the blockages, those energetic blockages in the body, and to allow God, source energy, whatever you want to call it, to flow through. So then 7, acceptance. So this again is about accepting our rightful place in the universe. So acceptance through humbleness with the cosmos, knowing that I am a perfectly imperfect, flawed vessel of God. I am fractal energy. And so this shifts from not, you know, to humble yourself from a place of fear or shame or disconnection, but humbling oneself and knowing that the process of awakening is about becoming whole. I now believe that holiness, being holy, is becoming whole, mind, body, spirit, and anyone and everyone can achieve it. And so 8 made a list of people, places, and things that we either chose to give our power to, or we imposed our power over. And then we became willing to shift our energy residence around the experience. So resonance is just when 2 frequencies can, they kind of like can sync up and be together, and that is resonance. And so I shifted my energy residence around these experiences that no longer served me, to separate myself, or to move, not separate, but to move on from this idea of either giving someone or a person, place, or thing my power, or imposing my power on someone. So for instance, giving my power over, I in the past gave my power over to some of the relationships and the men that I had. And for me, the sex and drugs went hand in hand all the way through. And so, or giving my power over to an inanimate object like cocaine or crack, or even cigarettes, or anything, and being able to shift that energy, take my power back. And so this is really moves us into 9, which is forgiveness. And forgiveness has been another huge step in my I won't say recovery, in my spiritual evolution. And one of the biggest lessons that I've had to learn is forgiveness of self. And so forgiveness of self and others energetically. And, for this, I feel that, and I have some very different opinions on if you really need to go to that person to forgive them or not, because I feel that sometimes if the energy isn't in sync, then it could do more harm than good. So it's really about forgiving ourselves, forgiving others on an energetic level, and releasing that energy. And then you keep it moving. And if you need to go back to it, and if you feel the energy of wanting to come into communion with another, for a forgiveness ceremony, I believe it's called the Ho'oponopono. I can't pronounce it right, but it's the Hawaiian forgiveness ceremony. That's a really beautiful one. So there's things, there's different modalities. And then as far as like with some people, for instance, I have run across a good amount of bully energy in my life, people that possess this energy of the bully. And so I just recently had to walk away from a situation where that person was putting bully energy out. I didn't want anything to do with it, so I kept it moving. However, I was able to energetically release any type of lower vibrational attachment. So no resentment, no anger towards this person. No, I was able to forgive and release, but I'm not interested in hanging out. You know what I'm saying? Keep it moving. And then 10 really, and honestly, the last 3 steps are very similar to the more traditional 12-step programs. in that I do agree that we need to continue to practice moment to moment mindfulness and really look at, and again, I just reframe this in a more solution based way, and become over willing. I liked that idea of becoming over willing to release any energies that come up within the day that no longer serve us. It's not to say that energies that no longer serve us won't come up, because I mean, a lot of us, and I know for me, that the hell loops and patterns that I created in my life, the grooves were so deep that I mean, it just, it takes a while, guys, for the energies to dissipate. And so things are going to come up. It doesn't mean that you are an inherently bad, or, that you're not healing or any of that shit. It's just, the cycles are well grooved. And so it takes time. So if a funky thought comes up, then you acknowledge that thought. Don't attach to it. Just let that shit flow on by and then release. And so that was what I began to do on a very, very conscious level. 11 and 12. So 11 is seek internal balance through prayer, which I believe is asking, and meditation, which I believe is listening. And both of these together create the resonance needed to allow God's source energy, or, if you're less spiritual or more scientific, to let, the positive polarity type energy flow through you. And then 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of not someone else's steps or someone else's process, because I believe that it is all individual and internal, but by connecting with our own inner power. So for me, it was not about following anyone else's prescribed program. This is what you have to do. You got to bake it at 350 for 55 minutes. And if you don't do that, it's going to come out all wonky, right? No, I am my own powerhouse, and I had to go within to my own internal power. And that was what, allowed me to break free from the energetic connection that I had with these dense, addictive, spiritually draining energies. And so let's see, what else I said? Okay, yeah, so we embody. And so I began to embody this energy of holiness, mind, body, spirit, wholeness. And then we radiate that energy out to the world. Now, I know that that was long-winded, and Jackie, you did not interrupt me at all.
You know what? I am in complete awe of the amount of work and thought out dedication that you must have put in to be able to create that model based on your own experience. And I really was, and friends, I haven't heard this myself prior to today. So I'm like, I'm signing up for that program. Like that, there was a program when I needed that program. So I'm thankful for you for sharing first off, but so excited for when you finally launch that model, and that model starts to teach people, a new way to think about addiction, healing, recovery, and reclaiming, like you said,
Yes,
part of ourselves that might have been, overlooked along the way, because it's not lost. It's just a little overlooked.
Absolutely. Yes. Because really, yeah. And it is a reclaiming, because in this moment, we are all whole. It's the perspective that we're fractured, that creates all the dis-ease in the first place. So yeah, thank you, Jackie, for letting me just blah 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 all of that. And and there's so much more. But that's really the outline, the framework, if you will, for how I was able to rise up and out of self-imposed, the stranglehold of addiction. Mm-hmm.
Beautiful, because it really gives our listeners an insight into what type of service they can expect if they do choose to go to you for some individual client offerings, and then the knowledge base that you have around the topics that we're discussing. So I really am so grateful for you for sharing such an in-depth look at your mind around this topic.
Thank you so much, Jackie. Thank you. So I'm excited to see where you're coming from now.
I'll be a moment here. So, my viewpoint does not shift that far off of some of the stuff that Elizabeth had spoke on, and that's why I'm so in awe of it, because I'm not going to say it as eloquently. There is no perfect way that I can say it, so I'm just going to kind of get into my own personal, a little bit about my business, because it is really based on a lot of the work that I do is based on the learning and trials and tribulations of my own personal journey. So I agree 100% with Elizabeth that there is no one way that will work for everybody. Working with me, there is zero judgment. Your story may align to mine a lot. Your addiction might be a lot worse than mine. You could have had a lot more traumas than me. There is never any judgment. And the first thing, in my opinion, to get rid of is judgment, especially judgment of yourself, because we are the ones that are judging ourselves way more than anybody else is. So that's really the first thing I just want to mention, because it held me back for so long, that shame of really letting people know what state I was at. Mm-hmm. And personal view on addiction is that by developing your conscious sense of self-awareness through that process, you are going to find the best treatment that works for your personal journey. Mm-hmm. And that is, in my opinion, the only way to heal fully. And nobody will be able to tell you how to fix your problems better than you. And that is where my challenge and my problems, I guess, with the traditional sense of recovery is. It's a very limited view of healing. It gives you this one style fits all sense of healing, when that doesn't work for the 8 billion people that are on this planet. Mm-hmm. I have friends who have used drugs and are very able to just do drugs every so often, and it's never become an addiction. For myself, I am a person of habit, and I get addicted to behaviors and tendencies as well as substances. And this is not something I was born with. I, through my self-discovery, realized that I have lived with a energy of fear for as long as I can remember. This fear led to feelings of unhealthy attachments, unhealthy understanding of what loving relationships are, which led to some deep-seated self-worth issues. Those self-worth led me to want to fit in to what I perceived as this affluent lifestyle that had a, doing, as we mentioned yesterday or in last week's episode, drugs and drinking early on as a way to try to fit in with people who I thought were, the cool kids at school. I wanted to be the cool kids. I wanted to be friends with everybody. And when that lifestyle got me kicked out of school at 16, I immediately moved to selling drugs as a way to stay with that group of people and live the lifestyle I wanted. I thought if you had the nicest clothes and the nicest car and the most expensive Louis Vuitton purse, that gave me a sense of value, and I really pushed my value based on what I wore. And I did spend some time in a young offender center after being arrested for selling drugs. And even that wasn't enough to scare me out of wanting to be part of that crowd. When I started with my addiction journey was very young with marijuana. And I know people hate that you say it's the gateway drug. I still smoke weed today, guys. I'm not bashing weed, but it is a tendency to, there's not a lot of people who have tried cocaine who haven't smoked a joint. So that is a fact. But it did serve a way of escapism and this way of, trying to fit in. And that became habitual. I continued to do that. As we got older and we started going into the bars and we were legal age to get into the bars, drinking became more of the habitual habit. But being out of control of my body led me to feeling very uncomfortable. I always needed to be in control, and all of a sudden you're introduced to cocaine. So as soon as you could do a line of cocaine, you kind of sober up enough that you can keep drinking, and it became coincided to each other. Drinking became something that you would do every weekend. So kind of like Elizabeth, I've been what I refer to as a semi-functioning addict. I have had addictive tendencies since I was 10 years old. And I continue to struggle with a few of my last ones, which is cigarettes. Actually, the last dependency I have, which is cigarettes. And I am working through that as well. And I do believe that we are here to have a human experience, and we shouldn't be limited or forced to avoid situations because of past behaviors. So I am really based on a cognitive behavioral therapy type of a treatment, that these behaviors were not something I was born with. They were created by repetition. I continue to go down a pathway that led to a pattern being embedded into my subconscious mind. We all know our subconscious mind really just acts based on repetitive behaviors. So my belief around healing is to become aligned within your energetic field, to be able to manage and balance your own energy so that you can live a happy, healthy life. To me, that is success.
Yes.
That's when I will be happy with that life. But I am aware that I do have these addictive tendencies, and I don't want to live a life of avoidance. I don't believe in that everybody will have to stay away from drugs and alcohol. I do honestly believe it can be reshaped to suit the person who is on that journey, however you want it to look. I believe that when I quit smoking, I will be fine going out and having a few drinks with my friends and going outside and having a smoke and then waking up the next day and not smoking. Other people may believe that that is not something that you can do, but I don't believe that I have to be limited to somebody else's view. If I believe that I can do that and shape that for myself and reshape that situation to make it work for me, that is what I will do. And there is no judgment in that for you. And there's no judgment that I have on myself for me for that either. And there is many challenges I have faced through my life of addiction. The biggest energy is being victimization. And as my life progressed and the cycle of drug use got to a point where it almost destroyed my life, or I was almost on that verge of my life being kind of blown up, I would change the situation. And usually that meant leaving a partner that I was with, because I would become codependent with another drug user. And that also became a cycle. And I really started to notice only recently in the last 5 years, these cycles that continued to play out, and it kept happening over and over and over again. So there was a time or a point in my journey where I just had to face, I couldn't even numb myself enough to not see that the cycle was continuing to repeat. I had a problem with rehab right away because I had a deep hatred for God for some reason. And it took a long time to kind of figure out why I used the fact that I didn't believe in God as a reason why I wouldn't go to a traditional rehab. And this is back in, the 2000s. So there, that was the only rehab I had heard about, but it was really based on, surrendering to God. And in my life, I had a challenge with that because of religion, I believe, more than anything. And this limited view that, we're all one, and God is great and we all love each other, love thy neighbor. And then there's these wars and people are using God. Like none of that made sense to me. So I was very disconnected from God in the religious sense. I do believe I had a deep sense of karma and spirituality, but I was really disconnected from that as well. I didn't know how to tap into it. I didn't have any faith in myself either. And I allowed myself to stay in the state of victimization as if it was my partner who was the real addict, the one with the real problem. And then I would continue with a new partner and the drugs would kind of subside for a time and it would go back to being, a twice a month thing. And as the time and years progressed, it would speed up and become every weekend and then every couple times a week. And the same with Elizabeth. It was this binge situation. It wasn't just, one line and go to bed. It was like a whole binging out situation. And it really was this path of self-awareness that I had to understand the patterns, the deep-rooted patterns and how they began. And I made a choice to quit using cocaine probably about 2 years ago. My path has been back and forth. I learned so much from the back and forth, but the problem with me was believing that, everything was forever, that term. And I noticed in my pattern that anytime that there was these really big changes or these really big challenges in life, it would shake up my sense of self-control. And if anytime I felt like I was out of control, I would react negatively, and that would cause me to start the pattern of using. So really labeling how those patterns were and then starting to take accountability for the fact that my life was where it was because of the choices that I had made. And nobody had led me down that path. And I had to forgive myself for allowing, I guess, for not believing in myself earlier, or not knowing how much power I had and just avoiding that. It was really more forgiveness of myself at first, before I could even face the forgiveness that I needed from the shame I felt for the other people on my journey that were affected. As much as my challenges were more self-destructive, the people in my life, through, not consciously, but they were affected. My children, my partners friends that I had lied to, parents that I had been lying to, and, finally coming out and being open. I am incredibly open on all of my platforms about the uses of drugs and the understanding of what it was doing to my body. And I found that only through the back and forth of using drugs or using cocaine was I able to really understand the effect it was having on my body. And I was having challenges and I had to have a colonoscopy. There was a polyp and there was some numbing that was actually going on within my body. And I could really see, because I had this new awareness of it, how long it actually took after using to come out of my body. And it was about a 2-week cycle of crankiness and then the need for sugar and then, not really being able to feel my bladder. And if you've had kids, you guys know, your bladder isn't always what it was, but it would literally numb the inside of my body. So I wasn't able to go to the bathroom and I can't sleep and I'm trying to, even pee, and you have to push out your pee. And it was just this weird, everything kind of like fit into place as to how it was affecting my memory and my attention to detail. It really just gave me this whole new awareness of all the different areas that it was affecting me. But I could never have that realization because I had never had enough time off of it to see it kind of play out like that. So really it was the back and forth of the journey for me that gave me that deep understanding. So if we are to believe that, the only way to recovery, and we'll use that word recovery, is through abstinence, then I would not have put all those pieces together, because it was through that back and forth, that struggle, that I was able to gain that awareness. And really, if we're giving a one size fit all, modality to your own healing, we're saying that we're all the same, and we're not all the same. We are creatures of habit, and we create these patterns through repetition. And that is why my work is really focused on learning to understand your own energy and having that conscious sense of self-awareness, so that you are able to mitigate and channel your energy accordingly, so that it does not create these larger challenges and these bigger, cycles or behavior patterns. And that's really what we're trying to do, or that's what I'm trying to do within my work, is to bring it back to you. There are 1,000 different ways to heal, and there are 1,000 different modalities that we will continue to go over through the course of our podcast here. But the importance is that you're taking that information back to yourself and understanding what will work for you. How can I take this information and make it work for my situation? And letting go of the belief that anybody else is going to understand you better than you. So that's really, for me, what comes to the two most important things, I believe, to help you understand or start to head towards the journey of, I guess, wholeness, or feelings of wholeness within yourself, which is intention and meditation.
Nice.
A lot of people who do meditation and they have zero intention placed into it. And I live my life as intentional. Everything I do is intentional. Every step I take has an intention to it. And as per my meditation, that is how I release. And not everybody is, comfortable with meditation. There are ways to, do journaling or sound healing and other ways, dance healing. There's 1,000 ways to do it, but to really understand yourself at that conscious sense of self-awareness, you need to set an intention to do so, and then you need to listen for the answer. And the best way to do that is through quiet contemplation. And this is something that all of my work is based upon, and it's something that I know worked for me, and I try to use this to help many friends and family on my journey. And the reason, friends, that I am able to do this is because I do believe that I have reshaped this energy for me. I can't be of value to help my friends and family deal with their addiction problems if I am still being triggered by liquor or places. And it's not to say I never have a trigger. I just understand how to manage those triggers when they can. And because I'm able to work with many family and friends, and I have a lot of family and friends that are on drugs. So it's kind of the people you know when you're in that lifestyle. And if you spent 20 years in that lifestyle, probably everybody has some type of an addiction in some way, shape, or form. And the only way that I can meet them at that level is to be able to heal that for myself. And I do done it. I do believe I've reshaped these patterns. And I do believe that you can do the same. And we're not limited by anybody's view of what recovery is. There is a lot of experimenting I have done with plant-based medicine. It is something I actually started with when I was 14 and 15, but now it's really used to facilitate healing. And some of the medicines that I have used, we'll talk about when we get more into the spirituality side of it. And it's not done in a way that you guys might think it's not done like to get high and sit there and, you know, laugh at a funny movie. There is really an intention set behind it. It is for a purpose, and it's not to be taken lightly. There are very amazing practitioners that can take you on a journey through some plant-based healings, and we can talk about that a lot more once we get into more of the spirituality side of things, because this is stuff that I use to help me reshape some of these negative thought patterns that I was going through. And I don't want to take too much more time about that, but I hope that, you know, a little bit of my journey and a little bit of my experience might have given you some awareness into your own personal journey. And if you are going through the biggest challenges right now, where you are releasing your dependency on outside sources to facilitate your energetic self, then I'm just sending you the biggest hug, because I know how challenging it is. And I know how much work it takes to walk through the depths and walk through every bad thing you ever did. And that's what the guy said. He said, tell me everything bad thing you ever did and let me love you anyway. That's what you get if you're a client, a friend, a family member of mine. I will never judge you based on your past experience. If you are there, willing, able to show up for yourself, I am there to show up for you, because that's the step. It's once you take control that you are the divine creator of your own experience, and you can choose the life you want, and you can choose to be happy. And I think that is my goal as myself, for my children, for my clients, is to get you to a place of energetic balance. And I hope that something I said might have inspired you guys to take a step in that direction if it is a struggle that you're currently going through. So thank you so much for letting me express that to you guys today.
Oh, thank you so much, Jackie. Oh gosh, you know, I mean, our views are very similar, and you know, but they're different because we're individuals. And so you know, when you were discussing really going back and forth, and being able to see the effects that it was having on your body, that was a huge moment in my own journey too, was actually. And so I liked how you said how, you know, if we were in, you know, more traditional models where you have to stay abstinent no matter what, and if you pick something up, you're a failure, and you have to walk the walk of shame, all of that, then neither of us would have been able to really cultivate that eagle-eyed view, if you will, that metacognizant viewpoint, and be able to see how it was actually affecting our mind, body, spirit. I'll also say that, you know, it really, I mean, I was pretty extreme. And it really took for me being able to see how it was affecting my body for me to be like, okay, this is, you know, this is not making my body feel good. And then also with the plant-based healing, I did not really go into that. And that was also a huge component. For me, it is whole food health that has helped me to get back into my mind, body, spirit alignment, or, you know, to be on that path towards full mind, body, spirit alignment. So thank you so much, Jackie, for sharing. I was just, as you were talking, I was like thinking of like all the people that really should work with you that I know. You're like helping your own friends and family, and I'm like, oh my God, you need to come and help some of mine too. So guys, you know, we both, you know, have very similar but different ways of guiding individuals to reclaim their own sense of self, you know. So it's just beautiful, just beautiful. I mean, just beautiful. So thank you guys for joining us today while we began to lift the veil around our own addiction journey and recovery. Your comments and perspectives are truly important to us, so reach out. let us know. We know that some of our beliefs are pretty unpopular and definitely not mainstream. So I would love to, hear from you guys and from your perspective. So if you have any questions or, anything else concerning our podcast, contact us at sex, drugs, and spirituality podcast at gmail.com.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And you guys just heard a little bit, maybe a bit about a style of healing. So if you guys are interested in individual client offerings, go ahead and click the link. It'll take you over to our individual pages where you can look a little bit more into depth about what me and Elizabeth do on our free time. It's not free time, but don't forget to mention us on Spotify. I'm like, do we ever stop working, Elizabeth? Probably not. But we do always,
We do.
we're always looking forward to connecting with our spiritual community every Saturday night at 11 p.m. So we want to continue to explore and integrate the shadow side of our reality. And we can't wait to see you guys next Saturday. Love and light.
Love and light, guys.
Sex, Drugs, and Spirituality Podcast. Elizabeth Maria, Unlimited LLC. And Jackie Lyons of Akashic Energy Healing is not responsible nor liable for any advice, course of treatment, diagnosis, or any other information, services, or products that you obtain through this website. Sex, Drugs, and Spirituality